Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines and, most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, you guys. I have this live show that I do, and then I also have a twice a week podcast that I do, long form interviews, one-on-ones with people talking about what they do in the industry, how they've succeeded, what they've pivoted from, and all of that to put best practices out there. So most importantly, you guys, it's to put information in front of you that you can apply, utilize, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. It's one of the many proudly reasons why I fly this American flag behind me every single day is not only are we the greatest nation on earth, but I'm living my American dream, and I want to help each and every one of you guys live your American dream as well. I got a very special guest for you guys today. I'm going to pull him up here in a second. He's one of my best friends in the industry. And we're going to break down a couple of articles because I'm sure you guys are all sick of just seeing me on the screen here. But before we get into that, you guys, I got to give a shout out to my friends over at VHub. You guys, vhubapp.com. Whether you're a broker, carrier, or a shipper, we all need access to trailers. And with fuel costs, maintenance costs, and everything else rising, you should never have to shut your operation down to have a trailer in the shop out there if you're a small fleet or an owner operator. And the best part, you guys, you get paid to move these trailers. So they got a couple of new ones on here today, you guys, and what they're working on. They got Paragould, Arkansas, going up to Orting, Washington, just outside of Tacoma. It pays $15.50 US to move that. That's on top of the revenue that you can get by loading that trailer out. They have Winnipeg, Manitoba to Vaughan, Ontario. You get 500 Canadian to do that. They also have Macomb, Mississippi going to Brighton, Colorado. It's a flatbed, and you get 1,600 US to do that. Then now here's these new ones. They got a heated van in Macedonia, Ohio, needing to go to Mississauga, Ontario. Make an offer on that. Go over there and put your offer in to move that trailer. And then they also have McDonough, Georgia, going to Mississauga as well. Again, put an offer in there, and that's for a reefer. So hit them up, you guys, vhubapp.com. My friends Stacy Steen and Xavier Campos, they will be in the audience. And just do me a favor, you guys, let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. All right, I'm going to bring him on. He's ready. They recently released a new brand. They got some of the slickest logos out there in the industry. So I got my man Todd Waldron back on as the CEO of Q Carriers. Todd, what is up?
Hello. What's up, man? It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
I know. I love the interior design work in there. Todd's got a nice layout. He's got the strategic placement. There is a hat back there, though, that I see that's kind of familiar. Where'd that guy come from? We're everywhere. The Freight Coach is everywhere.
The Freight Coach has swag right next to my new giving jar, the swear jar. I figure I'm going to put $1 in there for you each time, and then you have to donate what's in there at the end to an organization of your choice.
That's fair. I'll do that.
To give.
Let's do it. Yeah, man. I mean, fuck. There you go. There's one. Put $1 in there right now.
You might go bankrupt, dude.
Yeah, but possibly. Yeah. See, look at that. Todd only brought $6 with him.
I got big bills. It's gonna add up quick.
I love it. So, dude, what's new out in your guys' world? I mean, you guys have been around for a long time, obviously, and you got the rebrand rolling and everything. What are you seeing out there from the market? Because I think that obviously, depending on which news source you're at or which headlines that you're at, there's a lot of conflicting and there's a ton of information out there. But most what do you do with all of this stuff?
Yeah, great question. We've going through the holidays and the winter season and stuff. The end of the year was tough. We've had a lot of freight slowly, the volume slowly started to decline, but more so the revenue was declining the fourth quarter. And so volumes stayed relatively steady, but we saw a rate compression into the end of the year. The holidays were brutal, trying to find trucks. The weather really impacted a lot of our origin locations, and that was a challenge. And so we're just starting to see that smooth out this week, where we're getting our skis back under us and things are starting to level off a little bit. We're able to cover loads a little bit better, but man, it's anyone's guess what's to come in the first quarter. But
so you've seen this before, like you've seen a market like this before. And, I was breaking down an article yesterday about, kind of like the market stabilized, it looks like back in November, and where it's going to go kind of up from here, how this is going to look like. But I mean, a lot of the things that I'm seeing is, I mean, this is a predictive year in a sense of, I feel like it's going to operate in a normal capacity. If you're going to have the peaks and the valleys of holiday freight, I think it's going to operate in a normal way this year.
Yeah, I can see that. Definitely. I think how we get through January and February is going to be real telling. But I could certainly see that. Everything I've been reading and talking about was saying end of Q2, it starts to level off. But we saw some of that happening, and starting to see some of that, kind of hitting that base level again. And so I think it could be a relatively beneficial, normal, cyclical year. We're finally getting through all of that chaos. I mean, we were still feeling that end of last year, the chaos from COVID and networks and inventory and all that balance trying to level off and things. So I could see that certainly.
It's going to be interesting, man. But again, I feel like no matter what, like my biggest piece of advice to anybody is like, drown out the fucking noise that is out there. Like literally focus on your business and your customers, and execute upon the business that you have. And, again, it's like that. I think that the people who are going to have the largest years this year are just going to be the ones who don't stop, because it's going to be very frustrating. In a normal Q1, it's very frustrating because the freight never pays as much as you want. It might not be as consistent volume like you want out there. But again, knowing how humans operate, it'll get to a lot of people where they're just going to like quit. They're going to give up. They're going to go back into their shell. They're going to wait for a storm to pass, or however you want to throw it. So for me personally, it's like, man, you got to be there and you got to be present and ready, because that freight's going to go to somebody. We've both worked at large organizations before. We know a lot of the RFP strategies that we've seen from other providers about in a market like this, where, because I'm saying this because that's what we used to do. We used to go in super aggressive in these markets to gain volume, because we knew that in time, people are just going to eventually quit, and then there'll be a rebid and everything else that comes along with it. Or your better paying customers all of a sudden show up and you just start declining all that freight.
Yeah, no, I think that's very real. I think the RFP strategy is a huge focus now. The routing guides were working. Rejections were at an all-time low in fourth quarter, and there's no spot freight. Any spot freight you were getting was at a really low margin. And so as we go into some of the bids we're still working on today, the pendulum effect is still going to be a struggle here, is that shippers we're still hearing from them that they're expecting compression in rates. And so it's like, okay, how do we go get freight now? But then what's going to happen in this market if we start to see the demand spike and carrier rates start to increase, but yet we had to lower our rates to get the freight. But you can always have that conversation then as that changes if you have the freight. If you don't have the freight, there's no conversations to really be had. So investing in the relationships, like you said, taking risks. I mean, that's really what RFPs are, as a logistics company, us taking the risk on our hands into the pricing up and down. But
I think it's also one of those things, anybody who's going to have a challenge operating in this market. I didn't hear anybody complaining when you guys were fucking making record profits. No one was complaining then. And my philosophy is pretty simple. If you're good enough to make $1,000 on a load, you better be good enough to lose $1,000 on a load too, to service that customer. Because if you're not, I will. I'll win. I'm fine with that, because I know that this isn't a 12-second game, man. Like, again, this is how I provide for my family. This isn't a lifestyle to me, So it's going to be interesting to see. I gotta get some, holy shit, the comments are blowing up. They all came here to see Todd today. Dylan Turner says, good fucking morning. Let's get some. April Maroney, let's fucking go, everyone. Sunny Sharma, let's fucking go. Orange Shirt Gang, good morning to you. Zach Williams, good morning, everyone. Let's get after today. And if you guys want to become an independent freight agent, you guys hit up Zach. He's with SPI Logistics. Pat Green, good morning, Freight Coach Nation. Let's fucking go. What's up? Jolly Happy Wednesday, says Riley Dietrich. Matt Peterson says, good morning, everyone. Nathan over on YouTube says, good morning, Coach. Vitaly, what's up? But my man, he's bridging our Canadian and American relations out there with the Maple Leaf. Paris Craig says, good morning, everyone. Stace says, just throw $100 on it to start. Yes. There we go. There we go. We'll make it. Fabian, what's up? Good morning, sir. Nick Rumor says, good morning, all. Cody, here we go. Cody Kohler says, let's fucking go. Happy hump day. Michael Thomas says, let's fucking go. Let's go. Dude, we're just throwing it in there, man. If we're going to make a charitable donation, we're going to make it worth our time. And Matt Klaus says, RFP, is that the same? Yes. Request for proposal, request for quote. It's the exact same thing at the end of the day there, Matt. All right. First article, acquisitions, man. I think that we're going to see a lot more this year. I think this year will be, last year was aggressive to a point. I think this year is going to be a lot more aggressive. And this one comes from ttnews.com, and it's Road One acquires intermodal service provider. Road One Intermodal announced the acquisition of the Transporter Incorporated, or regional intermodal service provider with offices in Houston, Dallas, and Laredo, Texas. This acquisition continues its building out the commitment in the Southwest region. Since November of 22, Road One has announced the addition of a new Houston branch office and the transition into a 480,000 square foot transload facility. Dude, this is, acquisitions last year were a lot. I think we're going to see, I personally think this year is you're going to see some of these regional specialized carriers, kind of like what Warner did last year with a couple of their regional companies that they acquired. I think that exact same strategy is going to happen this year, but it's going to be at scale. And, again, if I looked at a couple of the acquisitions that I'll use Warner again as an example, that they essentially just became the bank for these companies. Like, they're still operating under their own authority. They sold to Warner. Warner has controlling interest, but they're still operating under that same brand. So I think that's going to happen this year, but like at a larger scale.
Yep, I'd absolutely agree. I think it echoes a trend we've been seeing. You look at it as the founder that started the company in 1988, that then, is looking to exit the business. I think we see a lot of that. Companies that started, especially in transportation and trucking, companies that started post deregulation, and then have not thought through, or this is a part of their succession plan as they look at the next generation. It was something that impacted us as an organization, and certainly was one underlying component of some of our strategy shifts, generational change and carryover. And there's so many trucking companies that started during that era. And then on the flip side, this really growth oriented strategy, this desire to scale, and by the bigger companies that have the capital to do it. I think it's great. You see more and more try to get access to capacity, trailers, trucks, and then drivers. That's kind of taken a lead where customer acquisition is a component of it, but with equipment shortages and driver shortages, that was a driving factor I think we saw too. So I would anticipate the same thing.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of it is because, like, even though, truck sales are up and trailer sales are up, there's still a lot of carriers who aren't able to meet the normal quota that they would for adding newer trucks on there. So I think that's like a different component to an acquisition strategy is what's the model years of a lot of these fleets? Did they get their, out there? Do they have 20, like what model trucks are they running? Are they 2020, 2021, 2022s? And they're looking to offload that. And then I think that's a way that they add to it. And it's also a way that they add to their driver count as a whole. Is at times it's like, is it easier to acquire a 250 truck operation that's already seated with drivers, or seat your own 250 trucks with 250 separate drivers? I think from a cost component alone, I think that a lot of large carriers, I would love to see what their recruiting budget is every single month for drivers, because it's not cheap. That's not a cheap component of it at all.
No, not at all. And I think that's a major driver in getting into that equipment. And quickly, you're going to have some driver turnover, I'm sure, with an acquisition. But if you treat them right and do the right things, you could retain a good amount of those. So I think that's a big component of it. It's also interesting that one, they're focused on intermodal and it being such a network play and scale play from an intermodal perspective. They did 4 acquisitions last year. They also did some recapitalization and are bringing in additional investor money, which is another trend that we continue to see in transportation, focused in the technology verticals, but also in the logistics transportation verticals of investor money helping to drive the rapid scaling of these businesses as well.
Yeah, too. Very, very well said. That article, you guys, was from ttnews.com. Road One acquires intermodal service provider. And as always, you guys, any of the links to the articles that I break down are going to be uploaded to the Freight Coach YouTube channel, as well as the Coffee with the Freight Coach audio only replay available on iTunes and Spotify. And if you guys do go over to those, do your boy a solid. Subscribe, share, rank the show if you see value in this, you guys, because if you guys see value in this, your network's going to see value in this as well. And that's how we're going to continue to grow and scale. And I mean, it's just insane what this has grown into. And it's because of each and every one of you guys who tune in and day out and spread the love. So I appreciate that. Second article, joc.com. This is written by my man, Bill Cassidy. He's been on the show here a couple of times. I really enjoy his writing. U.S. shippers still facing LTL rate pressure. Despite increasing pressure from shipper customers to lower rates, LTL carriers are holding the line on pricing, according to a Cowen AFS Freight Index for the first quarter. Unlike truckload, LTL is expected to exhibit strength in the face of economic headwinds, supported by higher accessorial charges and GRIs, which means general rate increases. Even as market conditions trend more favorably for shippers, Tim Nightingale, he's CEO of AFS Logistics, said in a statement, U.S. shippers can't look to the truckload market for a map to lower LTL rates, they said. The two trucking sectors are following different routes when it comes to pricing in early 2023, with a variety of factors unique to LTL shipping eroding shipper pricing power. Like, what's your opinion on that, man? Because again, I feel like there's some validity to that statement, because LTL pricing dynamic is completely different than truckload. And I know, like, there's a lot of correlation between truckload price changes and intermodal price changes, because it's kind of one and the same, even though, yes, one's on a train, but they're going after the same freight profiles in those two. So I think that to a point, he's right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an incredibly different business, and it's not as market-based intensive. It's more of a cost-based business. Like if you look at in pricing, how much of pricing is generated from market versus cost of executing the business, and they're more on the cost side, whereas transportation is heavily weighted on the market side. There's high barriers to entry. There's little competition. What was it? Did it say that the top 25 carriers are 90% of the overall industry? And it's also, there's so much capital needed and infrastructure needed to execute the business. If you look at it, as freight demand goes down and number or volume goes down, their costs remain relatively the same. So cost per pound or cost per pallet actually increases. So it makes sense that they're going to try to maintain rates. There's also little competition for the customer to go out to and find somebody else to move it if everybody's kind of staying in that same realm. I think it does open the door for logistics companies to drive optimization, consolidation, pooling of freight, and drive these alternatives and try to provide new value to customers. Companies like Flock Freight that are trying to disrupt the LTL industry, it might be a good opportunity for them to grab market share as well, but to drive some of that competition. But
yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. And I, like, to me, that's my biggest. I'm not against, LTL or intermodal or anything like that, but that's why they have the power that they do, is because what are your alternatives? And especially if the big four or the big 10 or whatever providers are all within a couple of points of each other on a price, because, there's not going to be one that's, there's not going to be like the Spirit Airlines of the fucking intermodal world or the LTL world. I mean, there might be, but I think that at the end of the day, though, this is why the amount in the truckload space, why 97% of the companies are 10 truck or less operations out there. And that's why it is more lucrative, because there is more competition out there in the market. And I think that brings more stability and more of a balance than anything, because if there's only 5 providers that control 98% of the market, what's going to stop them from all doubling their prices? And then their response is going to be like, the fuck are you going to do about it? There's another dollar in there, but
Yeah, absolutely. They have that control, and they can watch from afar what each other is doing, even if they're not colluding or anything. They can kind of get a idea of pricing strategy.
No, for sure. That's why I love the open market, man. I love free markets, free enterprise, I love business from that aspect of it, because again, it helps you. I personally think it helps you solidify yourself as a top tier provider in that regard, because like, if you're going in there and your main focus is what value am I adding to my customer inside of this niche? It's like, yes, it is hard to get in the door with a shipper. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. But once you're in the door, if you're truly that badass service provider that we all proclaim that we are, separation season happens within the first couple of months, but the problem that we find ourselves in is when we do get in the door and the first time something goes wrong, we run for the hills and hide and hope that these problems work themselves out. But again, I think like this year, to kind of tie back into our initial talking points about the freight market, if you truly operate in a value-based model where you are coming and if you were in the shipping manager's position, how would you want to receive that information? You will succeed and jump ahead leaps and bounds, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Ugh.
I agree.
All right. That article, you guys, was from JOC. U.S. shippers still facing LTL rate pressure. See this dude. I don't know, man. I think we might, when I have guests on, I might have to go a little bit longer because we only have 9 minutes left. I feel like we have so much more to talk about here, and there's so much more money that needs to be thrown into that swear jar too, I'm sure. Andre Stewart says, good morning, everyone. I'm developing a risk transfer products for transportation companies. I have a question that might sound simple. This show is incredible. Thank you. And I am learning a ton. It appears the primary means by truck, which loads are filled, is via brokers. I think, Andre, it's, I don't know, man, if you factor in that almost every asset company has a brokerage as well, I could say that, yeah, that most orders are filled by brokers. But I think that if you're, it's very dependent on the segment of freight. I mean, Todd, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, the Freight Waves had done an article or study back in a couple years ago, and I think it was, I can't remember the top number of, it was breaking down logistics, transportation, for hire, truckload, and then brokerage. Brokerage was 62 billion of can't remember the number, 300 some billion, I think. And so it's not as much, but it's been growing. So if you look at, I was just reading recently that share continues to grow. Brokers continue to take more and more market share. And I believe that's because they continue to evolve the value that they provide. They do what we talked about as far as servicing the business. That's changed, over the last 10 to 15 years, where they continue to provide new value, and they service and act like an asset provider. They honor their commitments, and then they're providing data analytics, technology, other value sources outside of that as well. So yeah, I don't think it's the majority. It's not the majority, but it is a growing share of overall for hire truckload.
I love it. This is coming from somebody who can answer what we were talking about there. And please don't DM him about how you can solve all of his world problems as a shipper. A man here says you can mess up the first shipment and still go on to have a fruitful relationship with the customer. It happens. All depends on how you handle the issue. Nick Rumor says, Vitaly Becker, #handle it. Shout out TJ. That's his whole gig. All right. Third and final, Andre says, thank you. Thank you, Andre, for the question. And hey, you guys, if you guys have any questions, drop it in the chat. I will answer these live on the show, or DM me any of these questions. Or if you're watching on YouTube, same thing. DM or drop it in the chat on there, and we'll answer any sales and operations questions that you guys might have. Third and final article is from Fleet Owner. New Year's resolution. This might come as a shock to some. Listen to drivers. Interesting concept on this. So this guy goes on to say, when I was with the California Highway Patrol, which not necessarily a fan of, but we won't go any further than that. We would meet regularly with local trucking companies. One company fleet manager always had the biggest smile on his face. You seem chipper, I said to him once. Something good happened? He said, I listened to my drivers, he replied. And are they happy? No, not entirely. In fact, they had a whole list of things on their minds. I was confused. And the fleet manager went on to say, look, our company has salespeople, but we could just rely on brokers. We've got mechanics, but we've had to outsource, but we could outsource maintenance. Drivers, though, that's what is trucking. A big part of my job is making sure that they can do theirs. I can't fix problems I don't know about. When I listen to drivers, I learn what needs to be fixed. It makes me smile, and it knows that I might have a hand in things improving. When you hear that, man, again, because you guys have owned fleet, you've been in this industry for a long time. And I think that statement alone, because a lot of brokers think of it like, oh, we don't have trucks, but the drivers that you source are your partners in this. And if you want to improve out there, like, have a sit down with them and find out what's really going on at a lot of these facilities.
Absolutely. And from an asset, so we've been an asset company. We've been in business for over 40 years. And what some of the transformation we did initially was really focusing on the drivers, and we hired a driver experience manager. His primary job, his office was in the driver's lounge. His primary job was to listen to the drivers, and he built first and foremost, his main his soul and being was all in serving people. So that was getting the right person was important. And then two, we had to make sure that one, he had influence internally in the organization, and then also was equipped to have a great feedback loop, right? And so one, he would build a list and jot down and keep an Excel spreadsheet of the things that he would heard. He was on our leadership team, and we'd have regular review periods of reviewing the feedback and the things that we'd heard, and would document, what are we going to do about this and what's the takeaway? So he could go back to the drivers and communicate the feedback back, saying, hey, this is something we're going to tackle this quarter. We're going to wait, or it's just not something that makes sense right now because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And so a big part of this was the feedback back. That's a big part of the drivers actually feeling heard as well. And so carry that forward as solely a logistics company now. It's continued to find ways to listen to, but also impact the industry. We're talking to a gentleman, Jeff Swenson with Line Haul Station, on some big things to disrupt the way freight moves in the industry to really improve the drivers' lives and the overall dynamics of freight and transportation.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. Because again, I think like for some reason, I mean, I'm guilty of this early on in my career. I was more concerned about how much money I could make on shipments. I wasn't necessarily concerned about what the driver was going through out there on the road. I'll admit it. I'm not on a pedestal. I'm no better than anyone else, out there. But I think we all have those defining moments where, it's kind of like enough's enough. And I have noticed such a substantial increase in carrier retention because, again, like retention on the carrier side and the customer side are equally as important to me. And, especially like with what we're applying right now in my brokerage, at Freight Coach Logistics, what up? But, like we're applying this day in and day out, and it works, man, because like 85, I would say 90% of the freight we are moving right now is with a handful of carriers. And it's the guys who've worked with us in the past, and they're going to continue to work with us. And it's, again, it's always going to boil down to, I'm more than happy to pay above market if their service is there and everything's there and my customer's happy, because I know long-term that will lead to more volume. I'm not concerned about what I can make today. I want to make sure that driver is making money because I don't have a business without carriers, as a broker. I don't. It doesn't exist. And if you're out here looking at these top fives, we talk about, obviously, truck parking is their number one issue. We talk about this every single day. Fuel prices is their number two issue. We talk about that every single day. Driver compensation and detention / delays that are out there. This is why you need to speak with your drivers, because again, it's not as easy as a driver sitting somewhere for 6 hours. All right. Especially because no one wants to work for free. Not one of you guys listening to this show or going to listen to this replay will sit anywhere for free for 8 hours without compensation. You wouldn't do it. So why is that the expectation? Because just as well as I know, Todd, most people paid attention. Does it always make its way to the driver? I can't answer that. And that's a question you need to answer for yourself out there. And I think that has a direct correlation to carrier retention. Because again, when that customer comes to you at 4:00 on a Friday, you're not going to have any question about covering the load because you got 5 carriers that you can call who would be willing to send in a truck to get loaded for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm a firm believer in the fact, like, I think conversations will make incremental change. Technology that's coming in will help improve. But there's some core characteristics of one-way, irregular route freight transportation that this can all trace back to, in my opinion. As we bring this back up to the market dependency, again, being more dependent or cost or market-based in the rating and pricing, and that pendulum that swings back and forth provides this competing pressure to me as a broker or me as a logistics company to build carrier relationships, invest in carrier relationships, because there's ultimately only so much that I can recoup from my customer. I might have the best relationship in the world. That takes you a certain level above market, but they still have the financial engine in their organization that puts pressure on them to bring them back down. And shippers expected us as an asset provider to build the church right? They expect you to have 100% capacity when they might only tender you 50 to 60. And then when the market flips, everybody's tendering you 100% of the freight. And it's not an efficient way to execute and manage because of such irregular demand. And I think that's something that's a core component that needs to change as well, as far as how we look at freight and how we look at freight movement. That's always going to make it a challenge to balance the trade-offs and the people that are in this ecosystem.
Well said, man. That article, you guys, fleetowner.com, New Year's resolution, listen to drivers. That's it. That was a quick 31 minutes. You know, time always flies by when you're having fun, as they say. What's my donation total? What do I got to send over? And what charity were you sending this to?
I think I missed a bunch. I'll have to calculate the total and we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I was going to watch the replay. He already threw in $100, but chances are, he's threw in more. Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, we'll do that, man. Buy whatever it is. Let me know. I'll match it and we'll donate some of that stuff to charity. We'll make that happen out there. But how does anybody find out more about Q carriers? Are you guys hiring right now, Todd?
Yeah, we're hiring for some sales roles. Always looking for good and talented people in other roles as well. QCarriers.com. You can go check us out and get more information. You can always email me at twaldron@QCarriers.com as well.
Perfect. I love it. Well, that's it for today, you guys. The Freight Coach Morning Show. We'll be back tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central. And as always, if you guys saw value in what we talked about here today, you guys share the show. That's how we grow, is because if you guys see value in this, your network sees value in this as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.